The night before my wife left for a business trip to London, I secretly swapped her birth control pills for vitamins. 4 months later, when she returned to the States, she was stopped dead in her tracks. I remember that night vividly. There are things that happen in life that, even years later, make you shiver when you recall them. Not because they were violently dramatic, but because right before everything collapsed, things were terrifyingly normal. So normal that you couldn't possibly imagine that in just the few months, your entire life would veer off in a completely different direction. It was nearly 11 p.m. Outside the balcony of our 12th floor apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park, a cold drizzle was falling. The amber streetlights illuminated the tiny raindrops, making them look like glowing dust suspended in the air. I was sitting on the sofa, holding the TV remote, but not really watching anything. The screen droned on with a late-night talk show, while my eyes kept darting toward the bedroom. Inside, my wife, Vicky, was packing her luggage. The sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the hardwood floor and the continuous zipping and unzipping echoed through the quiet apartment. Because she was the kind of woman who was incredibly organized and decisive, even packing for a trip was executed like a corporate strategy. Which outfit for which day, which cosmetics in which compartment, where her passport went, everything was meticulous. We had been married for 5 years. 5 years isn't a lifetime, but it isn't a short stint either. At least, that's what I used to think. I stood up, walked to the bedroom, and leaned against the doorframe, watching. When Vicky was leaning over, folding a few more winter sweaters into her suitcase. Her company was sending her to London for a 4-month project, exchange with an international partner. It was a massive opportunity. The competition for her position as director of sales was cutthroat. If this trip was a success, a promotion to VP was practically guaranteed. I looked at the back of the woman I had slept next to for 5 years and suddenly felt a profound sense of alienation. She felt unbelievably distant. "Don't pack too much," I said. "If it's cold over there, you can just buy more." Vicky didn't turn around. "I know what I'm doing." Her voice was ice cold. I gave a faint smile. Honestly, I was used to it. Over the last 2 years, Vicky had changed a lot. The higher she climbed the corporate ladder, the less she spoke to me. She'd come home from work and immediately glue herself to her phone or laptop. Our shared dinners grew fewer and farther between. Once, my mom asked, "How are you two doing? You seem more like roommates than a married couple." At the time, I just laughed it off. I told her we were just busy with work and didn't want her to worry. But truthfully, sometimes even I didn't know what was left of our marriage. No screaming matches, no physical fights, no obvious betrayal, but absolutely no intimacy either. There were nights we lay next to each other in bed for hours without saying a word, like two total strangers. Vicky stood up, zipped the suitcase shut, and finally turned to look at me. "I'll be gone for 4 months. Make sure you pay the utilities on time." I nodded. "Anything else?" "Water the plants on the balcony every 2 days." "Yeah. If any mail comes from the company, don't touch it." "Yeah." I answered just like I always did. Vicky stared at me for a few seconds, looking like she wanted to say something else, but then stopped. 5 years ago, she was the one who pursued me. Back then, Vicky was so different. She smiled easily, got playfully mad, loved dragging me to late-night food trucks, and loved wrapping her arms around my waist while I drove us around the city with the windows down. Once, we got caught in a massive downpour and took shelter under the awning of a corner bodega. Vicky laughed and said, "When we get old, I want it to be just like this." I asked, "Like what?" She said, "Like this. Together." I truly believed it back then. I believed she would walk with me for the rest of my life. But sometimes, people change so fast, you don't even realize it. Or maybe they never changed at all. Maybe they just reached a point where they didn't need to act anymore. I turned and walked back to the living room to get a glass of water. Vicky's phone was sitting on the kitchen island. The screen lit up. I never had a habit of snooping through my wife's phone. I genuinely hadn't ever done it. But that night, for some reason, I glanced down. A text notification popped up. The contact was saved as Hunter, VP. The message was a single line. I can wait 4 more months. I froze. My hand tightened around my water glass. For the first few seconds, my brain tried to rationalize it as work-related. But then the screen lit up again. A second message. Don't change your mind when we get back. My heart hammered against my ribs, and my whole body went cold. I looked toward the bedroom. Vicky was still organizing her things. The faint rustling sounds continued. I don't know how long I stood there, but as if possessed, I reached out and picked up her phone. The passcode was my birthday. It had been since the day we got married. But as the phone unlocked, I felt a sick, ironic humor bubble up inside me. She still used her husband's birthday as her passcode, yet this was what our marriage had become. I opened the message thread, feeling like an invisible hand was choking me. The conversation stretched far back. Not a day, not a week, but nearly a year. Line after line of text burned into my eyes. I miss you. I hate going home. I want my own life. Just hang in there a little longer. My ears started ringing. I couldn't hear the TV in the living room anymore. I couldn't hear the Chicago rain. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, heavy as a sledgehammer. A 4-month business trip. It wasn't about the job. It was because he was going to be there too. I sat down on a bar stool, suddenly remembering so many things. The times Vicky said she was working overtime but didn't come home until 11 p.m. The short, out-of-state trips. The times I called and her phone was off. I had been suspicious before, but I always suppressed it. I always thought my wife wasn't that kind of person. I always thought marriage required trust. But it turns out, the most terrifying thing isn't being lied to. It's that when someone lies to you for long enough, you willingly turn yourself into a fool. I heard footsteps behind me. I flinched and looked up. Vicky was standing there. She looked at me, then down at the phone in my hand. The color instantly drained from her face. I looked her dead in the eyes. In 5 years of marriage, it was the first time I had ever stared at her for that long, and it was the first time I saw genuine panic in this woman's eyes. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, "Who is waiting for you for 4 more months, Vicky?" I still remember her look, a mix of panic, anger, and a desperate urge to deny everything before I could say another word. Probably because for 5 years, she had gotten so used to a quiet, yielding husband who always bowed his head to her, hot and cold moods. So when she saw me holding the phone, looking straight at those messages without screaming, without smashing anything, without trembling or begging, she got scared. Because sometimes, the dead calm of a betrayed man is far more terrifying than the loudest roar of anger. Vicky stood frozen. She was wearing the cream silk sleepwear she loved to lounge in, her hair loosely tied back, wearing light makeup but stripped of all her usual arrogance. I sat on the stool, holding the phone like a piece of cold, hard evidence. We were only a few feet apart, but that distance felt like an entire lifetime. I asked again, speaking very slowly, "Who is Hunter?" Vicky pressed her lips together, trying to gather her composure. She stepped forward and snatched the phone from my hand. The movement was fast and aggressive, the way she usually dominated me with her assertiveness. But her hand was shaking so badly the phone almost dropped to the floor. She hissed, "You went through my phone." I looked at her, suddenly finding it funny. Not a mocking laugh, but the bitter, hollow laugh of a man pushed to the absolute edge. Because after all those messages, after all the secret dates, and I miss yous, after a meticulously calculated 4-month getaway plan, the very first thing she asked was why I looked at her phone. "Vicky," I said, "is the issue really that I looked at your phone, or what? You've been hiding from me?" She looked away and tugged at the zipper of her suitcase, as if by simply closing the bag, she could stuff all this mess inside and drag it to O'Hare Airport the next morning. She spoke quietly but defensively. "It's nothing. It's just work." I nodded. "Work, where your boss texts that he misses you, says he'll wait 4 months, and begs you not to change your mind." Vicky whipped her head around, her eyes red. Not from guilt, but like someone who had been caught red-handed, yet still wanted to win the argument. "Stop overthinking it, Mike." I stood up, walked slowly to the kitchen counter, set my water glass down, and turned back to her. I read all of it. The moment those words left my mouth, the apartment went dead silent. The rain outside continued to fall. The TV muttered in the background, but inside my chest, everything just stopped. Vicky stared at me for a long time. Then, she let out a forced, sharp laugh, the exact laugh she used in boardroom meetings, when she wanted to unnerve her opponent. So what if you read it? I looked at her. Something inside my chest fractured, very quietly. I always thought that if I ever found out my wife was cheating, I would go insane. I'd flip tables, demand answers, cry, maybe even beg. But now that the day was actually here, I just felt tired. So tired that even my anger felt drained away. How long? I asked. Vicky didn't answer immediately. She walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at her hands. A moment later, she said, almost a year. 3 words. But to me, they were like a knife plunged straight into my memories. Almost a year. That meant those nights she claimed she had late, meetings, the out-of-state conferences, the holidays she said she was, entertaining clients, the dinners I cooked and let go cold waiting for her, the times my mom called asking when we were going to have kids, and Vicky sat right next to me scrolling on her phone, completely unfazed. Every single one of those moments was shadowed by another man. I sat down on the chair opposite the bed, interlacing my fingers, trying to keep my voice from breaking. You're still leaving with him tomorrow morning. Vicky looked up. He's going to London too. Corporate is sending our departments together. And in 4 months, when you get back, you plan to divorce me. I didn't ask this as a question. I didn't need the answer. It was already laid out in the texts. I only said it to see how much further she was willing to lie. But this time, she didn't deny it. She looked at me, her gaze dropping, and simply said, yes. 5 years of marriage. Thousands of days together. Countless meals, times. Taking care of each other when we were sick. Mornings I started her car in the Chicago snow. Nights I stayed up waiting for her. All of it traded for a single. Weightless. Yes. Why? I asked. Vicky sighed, acting as if she was the one who had been putting up with me for years. Because I'm exhausted, Mike. I stared at her. Exhausted? Because of me? Not just you. This life. You're a good guy, Mike, but you're too nice. You're too safe. You're too normal. Being with you, every day feels exactly the same. I go to work, I compete, I want to climb higher. I want a partner who understands my ambition. You? You just want a quiet apartment, a hot meal, a kid, and a boring, peaceful life. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not what I want. Anymore. I listened in silence. It's strange. When someone stops loving you, they can twist all your decent, kind traits into excuses to leave you. So why didn't you just tell me? I asked. Vicky gave a cynical smile. Tell you and do what? Would you have just agreed to? A divorce right away? What would your mom think? What would my parents think? What would the company think? I'm at a critical point in my career. I didn't want any messy drama. I nodded slowly. So, in her master plan, I wasn't even a husband anymore. I was just a logistical placeholder to keep up appearances until she got what she wanted. Is Hunter married? I asked. Vicky avoided my eyes. That was all the answer I needed. I let out a dry laugh. He is, isn't he? Vicky frowned. That has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with me? You've been sleeping with a married man for a year, planning to run off to Europe for 4 months, and you're telling me it has nothing to do with me? Vicky stood up abruptly. Stop talking like I'm the only one who did something. Wrong. Our marriage has been dead for a long time, Mike. You just refuse to see it. I stood up too, but I didn't step toward her. I knew if I got too close, I wouldn't be able to hold on to my last shred of self-control. Dead for a long time? Or did you just slowly poison it? Vicky froze. I had hit the nerve she didn't want to face. I looked at the suitcase in the middle of the room. It held her clothes, her makeup, her documents, and probably a brand new dream she had carefully curated. This apartment, this husband, this marriage, it was all just the old skin she was shedding. Are you still going tomorrow? I asked. Vicky looked at me, her eyes returning to their familiar hardened state. I am. Even if you know everything. All right, I nodded. Then go. My response clearly caught her off guard. She stared at me. What did you say? I said, go. 4 months is 4 months. I won't stop you. Vicky narrowed her eyes. What are you planning, Mike? Nothing. But inside, at that exact moment, a door quietly clicked shut. No drama, no noise. Just the realization that the woman standing in front of me was no longer my wife. Vicky lingered for a moment, perhaps searching my eyes for some sign of pleading, a burst of rage, or some trace of weakness. When she found none, she looked flustered. For years, she had been used to the dynamic. She gets cold, I soften. She goes silent, I apologize. She walks away, I chase her. But that night, I stopped chasing. I turned, walked into the living room, turned off the TV, and went into the Fromsen small home office. I sat down at my computer, created a new folder, and named it Divorce File. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was unnervingly clear. I began backing up the photos of the texts I had just sent to my own phone. Then, I pulled up our joint bank statements. I started finding the anomalies, transactions Vicky had previously passed off as client dinners, hotel rooms booked locally under the guise of corporate events, flights to Miami, New York, and Denver that I had genuinely believed were work trips. The puzzle pieces began snapping into place. Over the last year, it wasn't just an emotional and physical affair. There were shady, financial transactions too. Once, Vicky transferred $10,000 to Hunter with the memo project advance. Another time, $7,500 was pulled from our joint savings. Vicky told me her parents needed emergency repairs on their house. Now, I doubted everything. At nearly 2 a.m., the office door opened. Vicky stood there, her voice much smaller than before. Mike, please don't blow this out of proportion. I didn't turn around. Are you scared? She stayed silent. I continued, I'm not going to cause a scene, Vicky. I'm not going to confront him, and I'm not dragging our families into this tonight. But what belongs to me, I am keeping. Whatever you took from this marriage through lies, I am taking back. Vicky stepped into the room, standing behind my chair. How much do you want? I slowly turned to look at her. That question hurt more than her admitting to the affair. To her, a 5-year marriage was something that could be settled with a payout. I'm not selling my dignity, Vicky. I just want the truth. Vicky looked at me, her lips trembling slightly, before delivering a line I will never forget. Don't push me, Mike. If you ruin this trip for me, you'll regret. I looked at the woman who had once promised she wanted to grow old with me under broader, a rain-soaked bodega awning. Now she was standing in our home office, looking at me like an enemy, using threats to protect a lie. I didn't reply. I just shut down my computer and walked past her. The next morning, at 6 a.m., Vicky rolled her suitcase out the door. Before she closed it, she looked back. Maybe she was hoping I'd say something to stop her. I just said, have a safe flight. The door clicked shut. The sound of her suitcase wheels faded down the hallway. I stood in the empty apartment, looking at her slippers slightly askew by the Plausen shoe rack, and felt an overwhelming emptiness. But starting that morning, I also understood something very clearly. Sometimes, people leave not so you can chase hit them, but so you can finally see that they abandoned you a long time ago. What Vicky didn't know was that this 4-month trip wasn't just the final escape from our marriage. It was a trap she was walking right into, built by her own greed and blind ambition. After she left, I didn't go to work right away. I stood in front of the closed door for a very long time, long enough for my coffee on the counter to go cold. The apartment was dead quiet, save for the ticking of the wall clock. It felt like a reminder that this was no longer a vague suspicion. It was a cold, hard reality, leaving me no room to lie to myself anymore. I walked into the bedroom, looking at the empty space where her suitcase had been. I looked at the closet that still smelled like her perfume and felt a sharp, deep ache in my chest. Because no matter how angry you are, no matter what text you read, when you share 5 years with someone, you can't just flip a switch and turn it off. It's like a tree that's taken root in your chest. Pulling it out brings up dirt, blood, and memories you thought were buried. I didn't cry, but my throat tightened. I remembered our wedding day, my mom holding Vicky's hand in the venue courtyard, saying gently, You're my son's wife now. I don't ask for much, just that you two take care of each other. Don't resent each other when you're broke, and don't forget each other when you're successful. Vicky had smiled so sweetly, calling her mom, promising, "Don't worry, Mom. Mike and I will be good to each other." Good to each other. Thinking about that now felt like a sick joke. Around 8 a.m., my mom called from Wisconsin. Her voice was as warm as always. "Hey, Mike, you at work yet?" I looked around the empty apartment. "Just heading out, Mom." "Did Vicky's flight take off?" "Yeah, she's probably in the air by now." My mom paused, then said, "She's going to be gone a long time. Make sure you eat properly. Don't just work yourself to death and skip meals. You men get so sloppy when you're left alone." My nose stung. Older parents are always like that. They only see the peaceful facade we put up. If we don't tell them about the cracks in the foundation, they'll never know. "I know, Mom," I said softly. "Come up this weekend if you're free," she added. "I'll make your favorite pot. Roast." "Okay, Mom." I hung up. I didn't tell her anything. Not to hide it forever, but because I knew right now, the person who would hurt the most wouldn't be me, but her. She was a simple, honest woman who truly believed her daughter-in-law was just busy and ambitious, maybe a bit distant, but never a bad person. I took a half day off work. I sat in my home office, reopened all the evidence from the night before, and started building a timeline. March. Vicky said she was in Denver for a conference, but the hotel receipt was for a king suite paid with our joint credit card. May. Vicky wired Hunter $10,000 noted as contract advance, but digging through her discarded files, I found no project by that name. July. Vicky came home at 1 a.m., smelling like alcohol. When I asked, she snapped at me for acting like her father. In her text that same night, Hunter had sent her a photo of 2 wine glasses on a table, and sitting next to them was the silver bracelet I had bought her for our 3rd anniversary. Every little detail I had ignored before now came back as a needle stabbing into me. By noon, I called Kevin, an old college buddy, who is now a lawyer working in The Loop. Kevin heard my voice and instantly knew something was wrong. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "My office, 3 p.m. I got there at 3. Kevin's office was on the 4th floor of a sleek building, on Wacker Drive. It smelled of legal pads and stale coffee, the universal scent of places people go when a relationship is too broken to be fixed at home. Kevin poured me water, sat across from me, and asked, "Marriage stuff?" I nodded and handed him a flash drive. Kevin plugged it into his laptop and started clicking through the folders, screenshots, and financial statements. The longer he looked, the darker his expression got. Finally, he took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and said, "Mike, I'm going to shoot straight with you. Emotional betrayals suck, but legally, you need to stay ice cold. Don't get hot-headed. Don't do anything that turns you from the victim into the aggressor." I looked at him. I'm not planning to confront him or start a scene. Good. No tracking him down, no threatening him, no airing this out on Facebook, and no marching into their HR department. It feels good in the moment, but it backfires in court. Your job right now is to secure evidence, audit your joint, assets, and trace every weird transaction. Illinois is an equitable distribution state. If we can prove she dissipated marital assets to fund her affair, or funneled money into shady shell companies, we can request a disproportionate share of the remaining assets during the divorce. What about the cheating? I asked. Kevin sighed. It provides context, and it's proof of the breakdown of the marriage, but judges care most about the money. The assets, the debt, and what has your name on it. Do you guys have kids? I shook my head. Kevin paused, then spoke a bit softer. Then the hardest part is going to be in your head, not on paper. That hit me hard. He was right. You can sign divorce papers, you can split bank accounts, but no lawyer can negotiate away the pain of betrayal. What should I do for the next 4 months while she's gone? I asked. Act normal. As normal as humanly possible. Don't let her know you're building a case. Gather every piece of financial data you can. Freeze any major transfers. Check the deed to the condo, your savings, life insurance, and any loans in both your names. If there is cash in the joint accounts, you need to pull the process statements today. I nodded. Driving home, It was rush hour on Michigan Avenue. Traffic was gridlocked. Horns, honking, sirens wailing, rain misting on my windshield. The noise of millions of people living their normal lives. I sat in my car feeling like I was trapped, behind soundproof glass, watching the world move on while I was stuck in a story, with no clear ending. That evening, Vicky texted me. I made it to the hotel. She attached a photo of herself at Heathrow Airport, bright lights, polished floors. She was standing next to her gray suitcase, makeup flawless, smiling, brightly, as if our confrontation the night before had never happened, as if she was just a devoted wife on a work trip, and I was the loving husband waiting at home. I stared at the picture for a long time, then replied, "Good. Get some rest." Read instantly. No reply. I didn't know if she was alone or if Hunter was already there. I didn't want to, I guess. Some truths only drag you deeper into the mud if you obsess over them. I needed to stay sharp. I needed to move methodically, step by step, and not lose my grip just because she had lost her morals. Over the next 3 days, Vicky started posting photos online. First, it was the London office building, the River Thames, classic red phone booths. Then it was fancy dinners, cocktails by floor-to-ceiling windows, and group photos with her colleagues. In the first group photo, Hunter was there. He was standing half a step behind. Vicky in a sharp black trench coat, tall, mature features, the very image of a successful executive that ambitious women like Vicky are drawn to. Not overly flashy, but oozing the confidence of a man used to being obeyed. I zoomed in on the photo. On his left hand, I saw a wedding band. He was married. It wasn't just a theory anymore. On Thursday night, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice answered, deep and exhausted. "Is this Mike, Vicky's husband?" I paused for a second. "Yes. Who is this?" "I'm Megan, Hunter's wife." I shot up from the couch. In that instant, I knew the situation was bleeding, far past the walls of my own apartment. Megan spoke slowly, like someone who had to summon every ounce of courage just to dial the phone. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I think you and I need to talk. I know they are in London together, and I know this isn't a new thing." I gripped my phone. "How long have you known?" "About 6 months. But I didn't have enough hard proof, and I have 2 kids, one in 8th grade, one in 3rd. I couldn't just blow up my life based on emotions." Her voice was steady, but it was the kind of steadiness that comes from suppressing agony for far too long. We agreed to meet the next afternoon at a quiet coffee shop in Wicker Park. Megan looked to be in her early 40s. She wore a crisp white blouse and had her hair in a low bun. She wasn't stunningly beautiful, but she had a kind, graceful face, though her eyes had deep bags from obvious sleep deprivation. She slid a thick manila folder across the table. Inside were photos of Hunter and Vicky at various locations around Chicago. There were hotel receipts, bank statements showing money moving between Hunter and Vicky, and Megan's own handwritten logs cross-referencing Hunter's business trips with Vicky's travel schedule. "I don't want revenge," Megan said calmly. "I just want to protect my kids and secure my legal share of our assets. Hunter is attempting to funnel money into shell companies, and Vicky's name is listed as an intermediary on a few of these transactions." A cold chill washed over me. "What did you say?" Megan looked at me, a mix of pity and absolute seriousness in her eyes. "Mike, Vicky isn't just cheating on you. She's getting tangled up in Hunter's financial mess. If you aren't careful, when this blows up, the debt and the legal fallout could drag you down with her." I felt the blood drain from my face. I thought I was dealing with a broken marriage and infidelity. I had no idea that beneath the surface, there were corporate accounts, wire transfers, and fraudulent shell games. If I didn't act fast, my entire life could be destroyed by a woman who didn't even view me as her husband anymore. That night, I went home and tore through our filing cabinet. I wasn't looking for love letters or hotel receipts anymore. I was auditing every contract, every loan, every signature. And then, at the very bottom of Vicky's desk drawer, I found a carefully hidden manila envelope. Inside was a photocopied draft for a plank capital contribution to a newly registered LLC downtown. The investment amount was $150,000. The representative authorizing the transfer was Vicky, but under source of funds, A single line made my stomach drop. Joint marital assets. I sat there, paralyzed. $150,000. That was nearly my entire life savings from 10 years of working, plus the money I got from selling a piece of land. My dad left me in Wisconsin. I looked at Vicky's signature on the draft. The expected execution date was set for the third week of her London trip. Suddenly, the reality of this 4-month exchange program became horrifyingly clear. This wasn't just a romantic getaway. It wasn't just a trial run for her divorce. It was the final step in a calculated plan to drain every ounce of value from our marriage before she tossed it away. I set the folder down. My hands had stopped shaking. When pain crosses a certain threshold, it metabolizes into pure, icy clarity. I picked up my phone and called Kevin. When he answered, I only said one thing. Kevin, I found the smoking gun. This isn't just a divorce anymore. Outside the balcony, the rain had started again. But this time, I didn't feel like the discarded husband sitting in an empty home. I felt like a man waking up from a long coma, staring down a treacherous road, but finally knowing exactly which direction to walk. The next morning, I arrived at Kevin's office, 40 minutes early. I hadn't slept a wink. Not out of heartbreak, but because that phrase joint marital assets kept flashing behind my eyes like a warning siren. Emotional betrayal hurts, but when it's tied to a premeditated financial heist, it's no longer a wound. It's someone digging a grave beneath your feet, waiting for you to step the laka into it. Kevin walked in and frowned when he saw me. He set down his coffee. Did you sleep at all? Couldn't, I said, pulling out the folder I found. I handed it to him. Kevin opened it. At first, his expression was neutral, but as he read, his brow furrowed deeper and deeper. Finally, he looked up at me and spoke very slowly. Mike, this is bad. What do you mean? Kevin tapped his pen against the desk. If this is just a draft, it's one thing. But if this money actually moves, you're in a massive hole. To use joint marital assets for a corporate investment, they usually need consent from both parties. If they forge your signature or leverage your joint accounts, and this LLC goes under or faces a federal audit, your name is attached to the liability. Vicky wouldn't do that, I said. But as the words left my mouth, I felt ridiculous, wouldn't she? A woman who could lie to my face for a year, plan a European escape with her lover, and plot a divorce, what line wouldn't she cross? Kevin stared at me. Mike, think hard. Have you ever signed a blank legal document for your wife? I went quiet. A memory clicked. About a year ago, Vicky brought home a stack of corporate paperwork. She said she needed a family member to co-sign a routine vendor compliance form for her company. I was in the middle of cooking dinner. She shoved a pen in my hand and said, just sign it quick. I have to submit it. Tomorrow. I didn't read it. I trusted my wife implicitly. Now, remembering it, my blood ran cold. Kevin saw my face and knew, if you signed something, we have to track it down. He opened his laptop. I'm going to run a background search on this LLC. I nodded. By the time I left his office, it was almost noon. The Chicago sun was glaring, but I felt freezing cold. It wasn't the weather. It was the sensation of my reality being peeled away layer by layer. I went to my office in the afternoon. Despite my mind being a chaotic mess, I refused to let it affect my job. I had just sat down at my cubicle when Chloe, from HR, walked over. Chloe was a few years younger than me, softly spoken, the kind of person who fades into the background, but makes everyone around her feel comfortable. She set a matcha latte on my desk and smiled. Hey, Mike, I noticed you haven't eaten or drank anything all morning. I looked up. You bought this? She nodded. Had an extra one. Thanks, Chloe. I smiled faintly. She looked at me for a moment. Are you okay, Mike? I paused. Yeah. Why? You just seem really different the last few days. I chuckled. Different how? She tilted her head. Like you're trying really hard to act normal. I looked at her, entirely speechless. It's funny how when you are in agonizing pain, you think you're wearing a perfect mask, but observant people see right through it. Chloe didn't pry. She just gave a gentle smile and walked back to her desk. I watched her go, realizing something profound. For 5 years, with Vicky, I constantly monitored her moods, walked on eggshells, and carefully curated my words just to keep the peace. Yet sometimes, a simple question from a coworker felt infinitely lighter. Around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a FaceTime call from Vicky. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. The camera showed a bright, modern flat in London, large windows looking out over a foggy skyline. Vicky was sitting on a sofa, fully made up, wearing a white cashmere sweater. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think she was living the dream. She looked at me and asked, "Are you at the office?" "Yeah." "Are you eating properly?" I almost laughed. A woman in Europe with another man was asking if I was eating properly. "Yes," I said. Vicky paused. "Are you still mad about the other night?" "What do you think?" She sighed. "Mike, be realistic. We can't save this." I didn't reply. She went on. "But I don't want this to be incredibly toxic. At the end of the day, we used to be married." Used to be. She hadn't even filed the paperwork, and she was talking about us in the past tense. Right at that moment, a man's voice echoed in the background of her video. "Vic, you want anything to eat?" The voice was loud. Close. Then, a man walked past the background of the frame. It was only for a split second, but I instantly recognized Hunter. Dead silence. Vicky snapped her head around, her face draining of color. I sat, perfectly still. For the first time since discovering all of this, I didn't feel pain. It's strange when a wound is ripped open enough times, eventually the nerves just go numb. Vicky frantically stood up. "Mike, it's not what you think." I smirked. I didn't ask. "Mike, are you living with him?" I cut in. She stayed silent for 3 agonizing seconds before saying, "We're just staying close to each other for logistics. It makes the project easier." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. At this stage of the game, I thought I was stupid enough to buy that corporate HR bullshit. She frowned. "What's so funny?" "Nothing," I said, my face going deadpan. "Vicky, I just have one question for you." "What?" "The $150,000 from our joint savings. What exactly are you planning to do with it?" Vicky's face completely froze. The panic in her eyes spiked instantly, and the camera shook. I hit the bullseye. Her reaction lasted less than a second, but I caught it. If this were a year ago, I wouldn't have noticed. But when trust dies, your eyes open to all the micro expressions you use to ignore out of love. She quickly composed herself, putting back on her impenetrable corporate mask. "What, $150,000? Are you asking because you don't know? Or are you stalling?" Vicky went silent. In the background, I could see Hunter standing further away, now, holding a glass, looking toward the phone before quickly stepping out of frame. He didn't say a word, but his body language screamed that things were going off script. I realized Vicky hadn't told Hunter everything. Or maybe Hunter didn't realize how much I already knew. "The LLC draft for the downtown firm," I said slowly. "Funded by our joint marital assets." Vicky swallowed hard. She stood up and carried the phone into another room. A few seconds later, I saw a white door close behind her. "You went through my desk," she whispered fiercely. "Does it matter?" "Mike, I'm asking you a question, and I asked you one first." A tense silence hung in the air before Vicky let out a heavy breath. "It's just a draft, a preliminary proposal." "A proposal for what? Why are you trying to invest our joint savings without telling me?" She bit her lip. "I haven't used it yet." "Haven't used it, or are waiting for the right moment?" She didn't answer. "I'll ask you one last time," I said. "Are you taking our money to invest in Hunter's Shell Company?" The line was so quiet I could hear the hum of her AC unit in London. "Finally," she murmured, "I just wanted to make us more money." I stared at the screen, exhausted. I just wanted to make more money. Such a casual sentence to destroy a marriage with. Make more money or fund your exit strategy? Vicky flared up. "You are always so damn negative, Mike. You have no ambition. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I'm in my 30s. I need to secure a future. I need to take risks. I can't just stay in your safe little bubble forever." I sat in silence. I had heard this speech before. Whenever she came home late, whenever she complained about my lack of hustle, I used to think it was just normal marital friction. Now I knew those words were the sound of two people walking on entirely different paths. So you were going to drain the accounts and then file for divorce? I asked. No, she answered instantly. Too fast. It was a reflex, not the truth. She softened her voice. Mike, please. Just stay out of this business stuff. Okay? I let out a dry laugh. Our joint money, my name. And you're telling me to stay out of it? Vicky closed her eyes. Everything is going to be fine. When did you start talking exactly like him? I asked. Vicky flinched. What do you mean? Hunter. He says that kind of stuff, right? Everything is going to be fine. Just trust me. Just give it a little more time. She didn't answer, but her face said it all. I read somewhere once that when a person is blindly in love, they don't see the real person in front of them. To see an illusion they built themselves. To Vicky, Hunter was a powerhouse. A wealthy executive who shared her ambition and was going to pull her into the elite class. I was just the anchor dragging her down. But people who stand in the background often see the whole picture much clearer than the people, sprinting blindly forward. Vicky, I said, let me ask you a hypothetical. If Hunter lost his job, tomorrow, lost his money, lost his condo, would you still choose him? Vicky froze for 3 full seconds. Then she said, that's not going to happen. I smiled and ended the call. I didn't need to hear anything else. That was the answer. Not yes or no. Just that's not going to happen. Meaning, she never really considered the concept of true love with him. She was only in love with what he had. That night, Kevin called me. He sounded frantic. Mike, I found the LLC. I sat up straight. And? It's radioactive. Registered last month, stated capital is $1.2 million, but the accounts are virtually empty. Worse, I had a buddy look into their vendor network. It's tied to a firm currently under investigation by the SEC for a Ponzi-style shell game. They're using new investors to pay off old debts. If the dominoes fall, they all fall. I didn't say a word. There's more, Kevin added. Word on the street is Hunter is in massive debt to private lenders. Like, ugly debt. I gripped my phone. I suddenly pictured Hunter in his tailored suit, his luxury watch, his expensive dinners. Sometimes people only see the smoke and mirrors they are meant to see. Does Vicky know? I asked. If she did, she wouldn't be throwing her life away for him. I leaned back. It was dark outside, the Chicago skyline glittering outside my window. I felt cold, not because of the money, but because I realized Vicky was stepping into a financial minefield, led by the very man she trusted most. Right as I hung up, my phone pinged. A text from Megan. Mike, I just found out. Hunter quietly sold his private condo 2 weeks ago. He didn't tell me or his broker. I stared at the screen. A bizarre sensation washed over me. All the fragmented pieces, the new company, the private debt, selling off assets, the sudden 4-month exchange program in London. This wasn't an affair. This was a getaway, and if I didn't move fast, I was going to be the bag holder. I couldn't sit still. The ground beneath me felt like it was cracking open. I called Megan back immediately. You said he sold the condo? I asked. Yes. 2 weeks ago. How did you find out? Megan let out a hollow laugh. The kind of laugh from a woman who was too exhausted to cry. I've been married to him for 14 years, Mike. Everyone thinks I'm just a clueless stay-at-home mom in the suburbs. But when you live with someone that long, you notice when the air changes in the room. I listened intently. Lately, Hunter was erratic. Changed his passwords, transferred less to the Bay, household account, constantly claimed he had out-of-town conferences. I caught him on the balcony at 2 a.m. on a burner phone. When I confronted him, he exploded. It sounded exactly like Vicky. The playbook for cheaters is remarkably unoriginal. They all think they are criminal masterminds, but they just leave the same sloppy trails. I found a promissory note, Megan said. For how much? Over $250,000. And I think there's more out there. I looked out at the traffic flowing down Lakeshore Drive. People moving through their ordinary lives. And here I was, hearing about $250,000 in dark debt that my wife was about to entangle herself in. I'm not telling you this out of spite, Mike, Megan said. I'm telling you because you're in the same boat as me. If we don't protect ourselves now, we go down with the ship. Thank you, Megan. She paused. Do you still love her, Mike? The question stopped me. Did I? If I said no, it would be a lie. You don't just erase a 5-year marriage in a week. But did I trust her? Absolutely not. I don't know, I said softly. We hung up. I stayed up until 1 a.m. auditing our accounts. I found more anomalies. $6,000 for client entertainment. $3,500 for vendor logistics. $9,000 for retainer. Vicky had always managed our finances because she was in sales and better with money. While I thought marriage meant not penny pinching, giving someone your absolute trust is like handing them the keys to your house and locking yourself outside. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Vicky. You're awake, she said. She sounded exhausted. Yeah. Are you investigating me? Investigating what? Don't play dumb, Mike. Who did you talk to? Who told you I talked to someone? I asked. Hunter, obviously. He was getting paranoid. Mike, I'm asking you a question. Let me ask you one, I said. Did you know Hunter is $250,000? In debt? Dead silence on the line. Then she laughed nervously. Did you seriously dig? That deep? He's just restructuring capital, Mike. I closed my eyes. She was still defending him. So you knew, I said. It's his personal business. He's selling some assets. Don't listen to crazy rumors. Crazy rumors? From his wife? Something crashed on her end of the line. Vicky's voice pitched up, real panic, bleeding through. You talked to Megan? I didn't answer. Mike, it's not what you think. What is it then? I just wanted a better life for us. I scoffed. Still that same excuse. People who start crossing the line always convince themselves it's just a small step, just for a better future, until they look back and can't find their way home. Vicky, I said, if I lost my job tomorrow, lost our apartment, lost every dime I had, would you stay with me? She hesitated. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. That. I smiled at the dark screen. I already know the answer. I hung up. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Kevin called me. Get to my office now. I rushed downtown. Kevin had a laptop spun around to face me. Look, it was a corporate registry for Hunter's shell company. I scanned the shareholders. Vicky's name was there, but right beneath it was a line that made my blood freeze. Financial guarantor, Michael Evans. My name, my social security number, my address. I never signed this, I choked out. Kevin pointed to the digital signature. Look close. It was my signature, but it was lifted. Suddenly, the memory from a year ago hit at me with the force of a freight train. The vendor compliance form in the kitchen. She forged the context of the document, I whispered. I realized the woman I wanted to spend my life with had weaponized my trust to use me as a human shield for her lover's financial fraud. We caught it early, Kevin said. It's still in the processing phase. If we hadn't found this, they could have leveraged your credit and assets for a fire main massive loan. What do we do? I asked, my voice hollow. We sever you from this immediately. I need you to prove you were coerced or forged. I left the office and drove home. I walked into the lobby of my building. The doorman, Hector, handed me a blank manila envelope. Dropped off for you this morning, Mr. Evans. I opened it in the elevator. It contained 3 printed photos. Hunter and Vicky. At a restaurant. Hunter and Vicky with luggage. Hunter with his arm around Vicky. Walking into a flat. Attached was a sticky note with 1 sentence. Don't be the quote. Last one to know. I called Megan. Did you send this? No, she said. But Hunter owes a lot of bad people money. We aren't the only ones watching him. My head pounded. This wasn't a romance anymore. It was a thriller, and I was tied to the tracks. That afternoon, Vicky FaceTimed me again. When the video connected, she looked completely different. Her eyes were bloodshot, her lips pale, and she looked like she had been crying for hours. Mike, she whispered. The background wasn't the luxury flat anymore. It was a dimly lit hotel hallway. And behind her, down the hall, Hunter was backed into a corner by 2 large, aggressive-looking men. Hunter looked terrified, wiping sweat from his forehead, frantically gesturing. The confident VP was gone. Mike, Vicky's voice broke. If I told you I wanted to come home, would you still believe me? I stared at the screen. A few months ago, I would have killed to hear those words. But now, seeing her trapped in London, while the consequences of her actions caught up to her lover, I felt nothing but a profound, exhausting sadness. What's happening over there? I asked. She glanced over her shoulder. Hunter was now arguing with the men. One of them shoved a phone in Hunter's face. The company. There's an issue, Vicky stammered. What issue? I don't know. Men showed up looking for him today. I heard them arguing about missing funds. Hunter told me to wait in the hall. You just found this out? I asked. She nodded, tears spilling over. I gave a grim smile. I'm laughing because you finally see what I've seen for weeks. She flinched. Suddenly, Hunter yelled down the hall. Vic, hang up the phone! He was speed-walking toward her, but 3 more men in dark coats stepped out of the elevator, blocking him. One of them pointed a finger squarely at Hunter's chest. Where do you think you're going, Hunter? The man barked. The camera shook violently as Vicky dropped her phone. The call disconnected. I stood in my living room, the dead silence returning. I tried to call her back. 3 times. It went straight to voicemail. I called Kevin. It's blowing up in London. Debt collectors found him. Stay out of it, Mike, Kevin warned. You are not her safety net anymore. Do not let emotion drag you down with them. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that my phone rang again. It was Vicky. Mike, she sobbed. There was traffic noise in the background. I'm at a random hotel. I don't know what to do. Where is Hunter? She wailed. A real, agonizing cry. He's gone. Gone where? I don't know. After those men cornered him, they went into a room. When he came out, he told me to pack a bag and go to a different hotel. I waited for hours. I tried to go back to the flat. His stuff is gone. His laptop, his passport, his suitcase. He left the keys at the front desk and bolted. I leaned against the wall and let out a quiet, bitter laugh. The man of her dreams, the man with the ambition. He threw her to the wolves to save his own skin. And now, stranded in London, the first person she called was her boring, safe husband. Do you have your passport? I asked. Yes. Do you have money? A little. Are you mad at me, Mike? She whimpered. I looked at the ceiling. Mad? Yes. But mostly, I'm just tired. Suddenly, I heard a ping on her end of the line. Did you get a text? I asked. Vicky gasped. It's from Hunter. What does it say? She read it, her voice cracking. I'm sorry, Vic. I had no other choice. I stood by the window, watching the Chicago traffic below. People coming, people going. Some stay for years, some vanish in the night. I tried to call him, Vicky sobbed. His phone is disconnected. Vicky, I said. You aren't stupid. You just put your trust in a con man. She wept silently. Then, another notification pinged on her end. It's an email, she said. I heard her open it, then she dropped her phone. It clattered to the floor. Mike. Oh my God. What is it? It's a digital contract from the LLC. A financial guarantee. For how much? $400,000. My signature is on it. And, Mike, your signature is on it too. My heart stopped. Forward it to me. Now. I opened the PDF she sent. It was a guarantee of debt. $400,000. And there was my signature. The one from the kitchen a year ago. I called Kevin. He triggered a $400K guarantee with my forged signature. I know, Kevin said grimly. I just got off the phone with a contact at the bank. Hunter is fleeing, and he's trying to leave you and Vicky holding the plane. Bag. How do I prove I didn't sign it? Who else was there when you signed that blank form? Kevin asked. I racked my brain. Tyler, an old coworker of hers. I dug up Tyler's number and called him at midnight. Tyler, a year ago, did. Vicky asked you to sign a blank vendor form? Yeah, Tyler said, sounding confused. But then a few months later, my iCredit got dinged. I found out my signature was attached to some weird corporate loan. I confronted Vicky. She said it was an HR mix-up and made it go away. I quit shortly after. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. It wasn't a one-time mistake. Vicky was used to forging signatures to solve corporate problems. She didn't mean to destroy me. She was just recklessly arrogant. Later that night, Vicky sent me one last photo. It was a picture of Hunter's handwritten notes she found in her luggage. Backup routing account to transfer funds to upon return to US. Below it was an account number and a name, Michael Evans. It was a dormant joint checking account we opened when we first got married. Hunter's plan was to route the stolen money through my account to launder it, making me the prime suspect for the feds. Kevin, I called him again. They are trying to route the funds through my old Chase account. Get to the bank the second it opens and freeze it, Kevin commanded. I was standing outside the bank at 8 a.m. I froze the account, filed a fraud report, and handed over Tyler's affidavit that Kevin had drafted overnight. As I walked out of the bank, my phone rang. Vicky, I'm at O'Hare, she whispered. She had flown back a day early. Mike, can I come to the apartment? I closed my eyes. There is no right answer in these moments. I wasn't her husband anymore, but I couldn't leave her bleeding on the street. Come over, I said. An hour later, she stood in the hallway. In just a few months, she looked like a ghost. Dark circles under her eyes, hair a mess, dragging that same gray suitcase. She walked in, looking at the familiar sofa, the TV, the balcony. She sat down, wringing her hands. Mike, I have to tell you one more thing. I braced myself. I didn't give him all the money, she said softly. What? I was supposed to wire the $150,000, but right before I left, I got scared. If everything was so perfect, why was I so terrified? So I secretly parked $100,000 of it into a private account he didn't know about. She gave a claste and applause of Lax. Pathetic, self-deprecating laugh. I was selfish. I wanted a backup plan just in case. I let out a long exhale. Relief washed over me. At least the money my dad left. Me wasn't entirely gone. She pulled out her phone and played an audio clip she had found on Hunter's ID's iPad. It was Hunter's voice speaking to another man. Just get through this. Weak. Vicky trusts me completely. I have Mike's paperwork ready to take the fall. As long as she thinks I love her, she won't check the fine print. The recording clicked off. The apartment was dead silent. Vicky broke down sobbing, burying her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Mike. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. But if I could do it all over, again, I never would have left this apartment. I looked at the woman crying on my couch. I remembered her proudly wheeling her suitcase out the door, thinking she was walking into a grand elite life. But the truth is, people who chase fake lights eventually find themselves in the portia. Dark. I walked over to the balcony door and looked out at the city. I'm not going to sue you, Vicky, I said quietly. I'm not going to ruin your life. But we are. Done. Right here. She nodded, tears falling freely. We both knew some shattered glass can't be glued back together. A month later, the divorce was finalized smoothly. Because we caught the fraud early, and with Kevin's help, I was completely cleared of Hunter's financial crimes. The SEC and the FBI eventually caught up to Hunter. Megan divorced him and took her kids to live near her parents in Ohio. Vicky moved out. On her last day, she stood at the door, looked at the Partsa apartment, and said, "Thank you, Mike. I didn't ask what for. Maybe for not destroying her when she was down. Maybe for showing her what she had truly lost." 6 months later, I ran into Vicky at a coffee shop downtown. She was thinner, but her eyes looked calmer. I'm learning how to start over, she said. That's good, I smiled. I watched her walk away, and my chest felt incredibly light. People think betrayal demands revenge. But years later, I realized the best ending isn't retaliation. It's keeping your own humanity intact. You can earn back lost money, you can find a new job, but if you lose your character because of someone else's sins, you can never buy it back. And I learned something else. A person who genuinely loves you might be normal, but normal does not mean mediocre. At the end of the day, what keeps people together isn't money, flashiness, or grand promises. It's simple decency. Sometimes we grow up and get so obsessed with looking at the stars that we forget the roof that kept the rain off our heads. We think success is a bigger house, a nicer car, a wealthier partner. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a better life. But some people sprint so fast they abandon the ones who carried them when they couldn't walk. An old guy who ran a diner near my hometown once told me, "The scariest thing in the world isn't going broke. It's when you start looking at the good things you have and thinking they aren't good enough anymore." I didn't get it then. I get it now. A hot meal waiting for you is normal. Someone asking if your day was okay is normal. Aging parents calling to check in is normal. But if you lose those things, you realize how impossibly hard they are to get back. People abandon aging parents for careers, only to come back to an empty house. People abandon devoted partners for a thrill, only to realize the person they left has stopped waiting. Money is important. Ambition is important. But if you buy them with the trust of the people who love you, the price is always agonizing loneliness. Be as successful as you want. Make as much money as you can. But never lose your basic decency. Because decency is the roots of a tree. The leaves might fall, the seasons might change, but as long as the roots hold, the tree survives the storm. If you keep a good heart, no matter how bad the storm gets, you will always find your way home.